You're tuned into the Johnversations Podcast. This is episode number 53. And as always, I am your host, John Connor, saying thank you for spending a little time with us this week. My guest today is a congressional candidate from Georgia's 11th District with a 20-year career in healthcare. She is currently looking to unseat Representative Barry Loudermilk. Ladies and gentlemen of the internet, please welcome Miss Heather Kilpatrick. Heather, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. How are you? Are you having a good day? How's everything been going for you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm a little under the weather. I got my second COVID vaccination, so I'm feeling the repercussions of that. But otherwise, I am doing fantastic.
Oh no! When did you? I just had my second shot. Not this Monday, but the past Monday. So I'm like 14. I think I'm like 14 days out now.
You're fully immunized now.
Yeah.
I'm fully vaccinated, I guess is the word. I got mine on Wednesday afternoon, my second one, and it is kicking my butt, for lack of a better term. The first one was much easier than the second one has been. So I'm actually on blood clot watch, which is not something I was anticipating, but here we are.
Yeah. My first shot was worse than my second for some reason. It was weird. I got both of them, and each time I'm allergic to amoxicillin, like from when I was a kid. So they had me sit and hang out for like 30 minutes. And I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but each time I felt like I was sweating really bad, but I would touch my forehead and I would be like bone dry, but I just felt like I was like real clammy. And then after the first shot, I had the chills and headache and all that. The second one, my arm was sore a little bit longer, but it didn't kick my butt nearly as bad as the first one did. So I'm
actually allergic to the amoxicillin too, but
really?
The feeling of sweating and stuff is that's just an immune response. It's your body like working to fight the vaccine. So. Well,
yeah, I mean, you do have a long career in healthcare, so I figured if anyone would have that answer, it would be you.
I do.
I'm going crazy. Like, what is wrong with me?
There's certain things that will do that to you that make you feel like you're sweating or you have like a burning sensation through your veins. There's some that give you the sensation like that you're going to the bathroom. It's really bizarre, depending on what they're doing. So you pick up all these little tips and tricks as you work in the healthcare industry.
Well, and I definitely want to talk about your career in healthcare. And I want to talk about your congressional run and things like that, because I'm very, very excited. And again, Georgia right now is a very hot state. There's a lot of stuff going on there. But before we kind of got into that, I did want to talk about, for me, it's always important, especially when you are, how do I say this? It seems like there's a certain level of shady right now within the House and the Senate and things of that nature. And so for me, anyone who's considering voting for someone, it's important to kind of know where that person came from, what kind of background they have. Because I just think that, where you come from kind of plays a big part in who you become and what's important to you. So talk to me a little bit. I know that you were from Georgia originally, but talk to me a little bit about how you grew up. What was your childhood like? Things like that.
Yeah, so I am actually one of the few people apparently that are born and raised and still here in Georgia. Most people, and especially the Atlanta area, are transplants, but I am from here. And I had an awesome childhood. I won't lie. I have an identical twin sister. I have an older brother. And I had a great life growing up. My dad traveled most of the time, so it was mainly my mom, and she worked her butt off, and my mom is my hero. And we always had fun. She did things with us constantly, and I had what I would say is a normal upbringing. That was, I guess by my standards,
right.
But it was, my mom was always there. My dad was there on the weekends and stuff. And we, school, play, extracurricular activities. And the normal things. And, we always lived in Snellville area growing up, and just a normal life. So, things have changed a lot since I was a kid, and not necessarily for the better.
Now, talk a little bit about that, because I'm there with you. I'm the oldest of four. We had a single mom, and it was one of those things. I'm the same way. I've said it before, but my mom is kind of like something about moms, and especially moms with that many kids. There's like an automatic respect. Like when they grow up and be like decent human beings, you know what I mean? There's like
I have a healthy fear / respect for my mother. Even now, like I know if I back talk or something, she would put me through that wall. I have zero doubt. Like,
oh yeah,
I'm not crossing my mother.
Yeah, and it's crazy how when you're younger, you've got that like fear and authoritarian like respect role, but what has been crazy to me is kind of like as we've grown up, how I can't imagine being 15 and being like, oh yeah, my mom is like one of my best friends. You know what I mean? Like I talk to my mom about everything, you know what I mean? Which is weird as an adult to be like, yeah, whenever something's wrong, I call my mom first, and I'm like, hey, can you help me out? But I know that, you had said that a lot of things have changed since you were a kid, and not for the better. And I was just kind of wondering if you could expand a little bit on that. Like, talk to me a little bit about what you see those changes are and how it's affected you.
Well, I look at the last several years alone. Like I have nephews. I have 3 nephews that are my world. They're cute and perfect and awesome in every way. And I will argue that to the end. And I look at the world they're growing up in and what they're being taught, and you see this whole notion, like it seems like the civilization in the world is moving backwards, and I don't like it. It's you have like this white supremacy idealization coming about again, which is horrid. And, my nephews are very young, and I don't want to ever see them raised in that environment or have those ideas put into their head. Even if it's just in passing or for a moment. We grew up, when I was growing up, we didn't have that. If it was around, my mom protected us from it. And I don't want my nephews to be encountered, like to have those encounters. And the same goes for, we have the climate change. Like we have an existential threat with climate change. And that terrifies me, because I want my nephews to be able to grow up and have a bright, beautiful future, and not this looming threat of doom on them. And like, that scares me to death, because you see everything all the time with all these climate change, with the ocean and sea levels rising, and the average temperature is going up on an annual basis. So we have like definite problems, and this isn't things that were talked about when I was growing up. But now it's like a real problem, and I look at my nephews and I see this, and I'm like, I have to make a difference for them.
Yeah, and I think that is very courageous. And again, I have to agree with you. It's growing up. Now, granted, I live in Nashville now, but I live right outside of Nashville, and I'm from Michigan originally. And Michigan, I never really realized how much of a like diverse place it was until I moved south. And I'm like, oh, like we really had a pretty diverse population. But my wife and I, we have a 2-year-old, and it's one of those things where, when I was growing up, I had certain family members who it was known like, yeah, they're racist, and it's not okay. But it wasn't like, it felt like racism then was, and my friend Chanel was on the show, and she referred to it as diet racism. where it was, that there's racist people there, but they kind of live under the rock because it shouldn't be socially acceptable for them to be able to come out and say these things in open air, and they should be afraid to say them from repercussion, where now it feels like it is kind of been brought into the, I don't even want to say mainstream, but it seems like it's been made okay to, go on TV even, you know what I mean? Like, and kind of spew this rhetoric. I wanted to ask you, like, do you think, I don't blame Donald Trump for systemic racism, for people being racist, but I do blame him for kind of fanning the flames and not condemning it. And I'm wondering if you have a similar thought in that, and if for you see that as the way that I do is, for some reason, something about this presidency, this candidate, his rhetoric made these people feel like it was okay to come out of their quote unquote hiding.
So my theory on this is, I do place a lot of the blame on him, sure, because he was so outlandish and unapologetic about it. And he made it a new norm, and that's not okay. And that's part of the reason we're seeing such racism run about nowadays, when I don't think I think we had problems with systemic racism before, but I don't think it was near as bad as it is now. I think you can see a definite difference between pre-Trump and post-Trump. The people I really blame are those who gave him a platform, who encouraged him to run, who didn't do anything to try to stop him. And there's a lot of people, and I can admit I supported him at first because it was something different. And I fell off that wagon quickly, but it was, there's, the more you give something like that a platform, the more you're going to see this hatred and this vile and this disgust spread. But at the same time, the more you're going to see it become socially acceptable. And that's exactly what happened. When you give the highest office in the land to someone who says it's socially acceptable, then the rest of the country is going to see it as socially acceptable as well. So everybody who enabled him and continued to give him a platform, they're just as guilty. And even now, he's kicked off of all social media for the most part, but people are still giving him that platform. They're still taking his statements and posting them and reading them, and they're still giving him that platform. So they're still giving him that power to spread this hate and spread this message that's disunifying rather than unifying. And so you can only blame him for so much if people are going to keep giving him that loudspeaker.
Yeah, and I agree. It's almost like I've heard it argued like, the Klan doesn't wear hoods anymore. They wear suits and ties, and they're, in business and things like that. And then it's also, I think it also comes down to just people being opportunistic, where it's like, I'll have him on my podcast because I have a big podcast and I know I'll get people to listen, and, maybe I don't even buy into what he's saying, but like, it's like the clickbait or the view count, things like that. So it's, I agree with you.
Fox News admitted that at first, that he was a ratings dump. Like he whenever they had him on, his ratings their ratings went through the roof. So that's why they kept doing it. But that doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's scary. It's scary when my daughter was born late 2018, and we were like, oh, this is awesome. And then COVID hit, and then and we're like, we made the biggest mistake. Like, why did we bring a child into this world? And it's settled down a little bit now, but like, I spent a lot of time thinking about that. Like, what is it going to be like when when she is my age, and I'm hoping that things will be better, or that like there'll be a planet, for her to be on. So I agree with you. I think there's a lot of change that hasn't necessarily been for the good. I did want to ask you this, because I know from what I understand about you, you actually started your journey into healthcare from working, getting a job in a pharmacy as a teenager. So talk to me a little bit about that. What was that like? Because I've when I was a high schooler, I worked at Chuck E. Cheese, at Blockbuster, Fazol, like anywhere that would hire me, and if I didn't like it, I would leave and go find another job someplace else. Where it seems like you were kind of the opposite, where you landed that first job and then it kind of set the tone for your career going forward. So what was that first job like, and at being in a small town and working in a pharmacy, things like that?
Well, I knew I always wanted to be in medicine of some kind, and working in a pharmacy kind of intrigued me, because it takes a certain amount of discipline and honestly intelligence because of all the drug names and everything like that. I knew someone else who had worked in a pharmacy, and she told me a lot about it, and I was like, this sounds really cool. I think it's something I would like. And it was something I thought would challenge me, and be an introduction into healthcare. So I applied and I got the job. So I started as a pharmacy technician at 15, and it was fantastic. I loved it. And to this day, I can still tell you like all kinds of different drug names. I mean, granted, I still work in healthcare, so that's part of it. But I still use all those skills to this day. Like, it has helped me through so much of my career, like the different processes that you use, and the different, you can extrapolate those skills and use them throughout your career. It's incredible. Like, if people are looking to go into healthcare in some form or another, I highly suggest starting or at some point working in a pharmacy, because it will teach you so many different things that you will need to know. Like some of the nuances about healthcare that people don't realize. So it's very interesting. It's hard work.
Yeah. And it's, my wife for a long time did a utilization review. So she was calling healthcare companies, and I've talked about her a million times on the show, but she works in a drug treatment facility that's specifically for women. And she would have to call and essentially, fight with these healthcare providers to say like, hey, we need X amount of days for, additional days for recovery and treatment and things like that. So I think for people who, they pay their copay and they get your claim has been processed. If you don't live in it or understand the ins and outs, like there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes in hospitals and healthcare networks and things like that. From what I understand now, you are a director of operations in the healthcare field. So talk a little bit about how you made that transition.
So I've worked in a whole bunch of different capacities over the years in healthcare, and currently I am working for a cryopreservation medical company. So we specialize in basically it's like cryogenics. We cryopreserve medical specimens, and so it's really cool. And I get to play with liquid nitrogen sometimes, so it's a win-win. And I like it, and I kind of landed here in a weird way, and I was working in mental health before, and that is that's probably my biggest passion is mental health. And that was an abrupt transition due to some family and personal reasons. After that, I kind of just landed here in cryogenics. So, it's been an interesting career. I've done pretty much everything. I've done women's healthcare, orthopedics. I've worked in elder care at a skilled nursing facility. I've done, good Lord, a little bit of everything.
Well, and it seems like that's the best way to get like kind of the rounded perspective to kind of, especially when you are in a field for as long as you've been in the healthcare field, but kind of dip your toe in everything so you get the best understanding of the field as a whole. I wanted to ask, so you've had 20 years in the healthcare in the healthcare industry, and you've got this profession set up where you got a good job, stability, things like that, and then you say, I want to run for Congress. So talk to me a little bit about where did that seed start to grow? Was there anything that happened specifically that kind of made you say, like, I'm throwing my name in? Talk to me a little bit about how you got to that decision.
So I get my insurance through the Affordable Care Act. And a few years ago, Barry Loudermilk co-sponsored the bill to repeal the Affordable Care Act. So that kind of got me pretty livid, to be perfectly honest. And that kind of set the wheels in motion to start thinking about it, I guess. I started following Barry Loudermilk a little bit more closely after that. And he's done a lot of pretty horrible things. He keeps voting to defund Planned Parenthood. He voted to, get rid of the EPA. So he's just really not a prince of a guy. And the longer I followed him, and then the more I just watched things unfold across the country. And then January 6th happened, and he voted he voted not to certify the election results. Even after everything that happened on January 6th, he still voted not to certify the election. That was pretty much a deal breaker for me. I was done. I had made up my mind at that point that I wanted to run for some kind of office. I just wasn't sure what. And that kind of, sealed the deal. I decided to take him on. I was like, somebody needs to do something about this guy. And I think, and he clearly has some kind of thing against women, as he keeps voting against anything to help women and women's health care. So I was like, a woman with a career in healthcare seems like just the person to take him down.
Right.
So here I am, and I'm going to take him down.
Well, and it's crazy. Like it makes me so happy that not only is there someone running against him, but it is someone like you who is quite literally like the opposite side of the coin. Like, this guy is like, I want to shut down Planned Parenthood. And, again, it's like you said, anything that comes to like protecting a woman, he, for some reason, is on the other side of that. So to see someone like you, who's like, yeah, I've been in women's healthcare and I want to, expand services for women and things like that. And then with him being, I love, those folks who voted to not certify, they're the now coined as the Sedition Caucus. So yeah, that's to see someone like you run and beat him would be like the cherry on the ice cream sundae for me. Cause I don't know.
We're trying to make it happen.
And so I wanted to ask you this too, because he's a career politician, right? And we're seeing people now who are everyday folks starting to throw their name into these races and kind of wanting to take on Bethany Hallam from Pennsylvania is a good example. She's been on the show, but she was just like, I wanted to run local office and I just threw my name in there and I was honest about who I was and I was able to get this seat. And so, I'm wondering, someone like you, when you're going against someone like Loudermilk, who's this like white male career politician, like he really feels like Kevin Spacey and like House of Cards kind of way. But what are the thought processes? Is there a fear, a confidence? Like, is it kind of a roller coaster? What is the thought process when you're saying like, all right, I'm going to take this guy on?
Honestly, it's for the most part, it's confidence. And when I don't have confidence, I got Brittany there to push me forward. She's pretty amazing. But I think Barry's gotten a little too confident and a little too complacent. He doesn't do anything anymore, and he wasn't even involved in about 50% of the vote in 2020. He didn't even participate, which I'm sorry, they made it remote because of the pandemic. So you have zero excuse for not participating in the vote, because you could have done it sitting in your bedroom if you wanted, or living room. So zero excuse. He hasn't done a town hall since like 2017, 2018. And I did a Facebook Live town hall, and somebody made a comment, and they're like, look, you've already done more than Barry Loudermilk. And I thought that was funny. But yeah, I'm confident because, you know, it's guys like Barry that who are confident in their complacency that are going to lose. And they've just flipped this district to a tier 2. So they think it can go blue this election cycle. So his fundraising is down as of this first quarter, which is hopeful for us. We got to, of course, keep raising funds because it's not a cheap election. But
HeatherForGeorgia.com. You can head over there and make a donation.
Exactly. And he's not helping himself. You know, he's aligning himself with Marjorie Taylor Greene, which is, I don't know what he's thinking there, but okay. And, you know,
we have a sound effect for when we talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Hold on. It's a conspiracy theory sound.
Yes, exactly. And, he voted not to certify the election, which was not helping his case. And maybe he thought because he had just gotten reelected, he would be safe by doing that. But all that did was spur me into, filing my paperwork a few days later. So,
yeah, I don't know. I think I think we're living in for the good and bad. I think we're living in a pretty incredible time, because even when you look at somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, which again, every time I say her name, it's like Bloody Mary, If we say it one more time, she's going to pop up and be like Jewish space lasers. So we gotta be careful. But for the good and the bad, it seems like this is a time where people that are just looking to make a difference they've got a shot. You know what I mean? And so it's, I don't know. It's very exciting to kind of see you throw yourself in and basically say like, come on, man. You know what I mean? I literally have like a picture of you, like the Irish boxer with the, like the gloves up, just feeling like, let's go.
Yep. So I would love to take him on in a debate. I would love it.
Well, I'm hoping that it gets there. I wanted to ask, so, for people who are listening, because one of the great things too, especially in today's day and age, and I think you saw this a lot with Beto O'Rourke when he was running against Ted Cruz, but even if you don't live in the state, it seems like people now are so behind making a change that people in all over the country were donating to Beto O'Rourke to go toe to toe with Ted Cruz, who, if there's a person I can't stand, it's Ted Cruz. But I was just wondering, like, for people who are listening and may want to get behind your campaign and kind of help, talk a little bit about, and obviously they can go to Heather for Georgia and read it, but I always like to hear it from the person. But talk to me a little bit about your platform. What are the things that are important to you? What are you really pushing? And what do you think, what benefits do you think having Heather in Congress would bring to the state of Georgia?
Yeah. So my big three I guess, talking points on my platform are healthcare, jobs, and then clean air, clean water. So those are my biggest three that I'm running on as of right now. Healthcare obviously is my passion, because that's where I've focused my entire career, and that's where I've worked for my entire career. And I've also had the unique opportunity, I guess you could say, of being the patient as well. And then I get my health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. So I kind of come at the healthcare angle from different points of view. So with my career, my education, I've got, a ton of certifications. I've got a unique perspective on the healthcare angle. And I think that, we need specifically better healthcare can be achieved with expanded access and just more transparent and inclusive and comprehensive care structure. And expanded access begins with greater provider network coverage. Provider network coverage is one of the biggest problems with healthcare nowadays. There's just not enough providers, and then providers are getting thrown off networks all over the place. So this would mean streamlining the credentialing practices for physicians, therapists, and other healthcare personnel. We also need, government regulation over the pharmaceutical industries. This would provide transparency for drug pricing, which is huge and was needed about, 20 years ago, but here we are. And it would put an end to these ridiculous prior authorization rules, which I'm sure your wife can attest to, working in utilization review. I've fought those quite a bit, but I say this all the time working in healthcare. Physicians and nurse practitioners and physician assistants, they should be the ones that are guiding a patient's care and treatment, not an insurance company. Insurance companies should not be dictating the treatment. We have such a backward system. So we also need to address the most unserved and vulnerable of the population, and that goes to providing for all of women's health, not just whether or not to continue a pregnancy, which is all anybody wants to talk about. LGBTQ inclusion of care, elder care, and mental health care, addiction and treatment care. So as I was saying, women's health care goes far beyond just reproductive issues. The concerns of women have just been completely hijacked and used as a political talking point. And I could go on and on and on about that, but I will spare you from that. Women need access to proper care. They need cancer screenings, proper gynecological care, contraceptive care, prenatal care, maternal consideration, which also includes postpartum care and treatment. And that's just my healthcare spiel.
Right.
So there's a lot that encompasses healthcare, and as you can tell just from that, that's obviously where my passion lies. But my next biggest piece would be jobs. Because after the existential crisis of COVID-19 that has just wrecked the entire world, it's decimated entire job sectors, and it's left so many people without the means to care for their families and just care for themselves. And we need someone that is going to work tirelessly to ensure that everyone has access to work that will inspire and sustain them. Unlike some other people that can't even get on a Zoom call to vote.
Right.
So,
right. You got internet, man. I know you do.
We know he does. So apparently, but he doesn't know how to, and he can use Zoom because he gets on interviews for Newsmax. So not sure what the problem is there. But, the American Jobs Plan is huge, and I support it 100%. It addresses like the most pressing needs relating to infrastructure, and it's going to create tens of thousands of well-paying jobs for Americans who need it most. And we also need to work to ensure, the fair treatment of all workers, regardless of anything, regardless of gender, race, religion, sexuality, age, fair treatment across the board. We need to have paid maternity and paternity leave, miscarriage leave, paid time off for caretakers, sick time, vacation time, mental health leave, bereavement leave, and, basic unemployment insurance. If I'm talking too much, just let me know.
No. If I'm being quiet, it's just because I'm listening and I'm liking all the points that you're making. So.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure. Because I can get on a tangent with this stuff. So. No,
and I think it's good for people to hear, because this is the stuff that, like, when people go to vote, it's great. It's, MTG comes into mind, where it's like, okay, she's a Q supporter, so I know that about her. But it's like, when you're someone who cares about the issues and you want somebody with a plan, these are the things that people should be hearing. These are the things that people should know where you stand and the way that you want to move forward. So I appreciate you sharing your platform. So please continue.
Well, thank you. I also believe in all Americans' right to organize and unionize, and I think that right should be preserved so that we can ensure that all workers are treated fairly and equally. This would obviously include equal pay for all ethnicities, genders, sexualities, and put federal requirements in place for hiring and firing, which would end this, the states exploiting this right to work law, which is just horrid. And it would also be able to end employers' ability to exploit workers by misclassify them as independent contractors, which I know in the healthcare industry I see far too much of. It's how they get around a lot of different things, and it's not okay. And then my last main three is the clean air, clean water. Across Georgia, the United States, across the world, we're facing enormous odds to be able to overcome the damage done to our planet. We've stripped away the vital environmental impacts, We've stripped away the vital environmental impact regulations, and our children, our grandchildren, our nephews, they deserve a sustainable and clean world. And that is one thing I am going to be fighting for when I take Barry Loudermilk's seat and get to Washington. I intend to give them a chance at increasing regulation on the world's largest contributor to the climate crisis, which is corporations. Here in Georgia 11, we have Plant Bowen, which is a coal-burning power structure. And it emits large amounts of boron into the groundwater and other horrible pollutants into the air. And we need strong legislation to undo the damage done to our air and water. Sorry, I've got a thing popping up here.
No, you're fine.
We need strong legislation is needed to undo the damage done to our air and our water by the irresponsible stewardship of these profit-focused corporations and energy conglomerates. And I think with the passage of the American Jobs Plan, large investments would be made in building sustainable, renewable buildings, roads, and technologies that will help put things like this into place.
Yeah, and I know that's with Biden's infrastructure plan, that's a really big part of it, is replacing old water lines. Like, I grew up 45 minutes from Flint. So, that hits very close to home, where it's, a bunch of people from my state. Not my grandmother lived in Saginaw, which is literally like their next door neighbors. Like, you drive 10 minutes. So it's, seeing some of the stuff that was coming out of the taps, and the fact that there was automobile manufacturers who were using that water to clean off parts, and the parts were being eaten away by what was in the water. And it took so long for that to come to light, and they tried to cover it up. And it's just, I think it falls into that. We need a better planet, a sustained planet for, my daughter, for your nephews, things like that. So it's, I don't know. I think it's, if there are 3 things to kind of say, like, these are going to be the pillars that I'm building my campaign on, and what I want to fight for, I think that's a very, very strong foundation. And I think, it's hard not if you have kids, or if, you have people that you care about, or you care about the planet, it's hard to look at any of that and be like, well, I don't know if I'm going to vote for her or not. It's like, so, I wanted to ask too, because one thing that's really been plaguing me, and I've spent way too much time thinking about it, but is kind of the hypocrisy of the right towards the left. And the best way that I've heard it explained is that Republicans say that Democrats are literally killing babies, drinking their blood. They're part of this underground cabal that controls. It's this huge conspiracy that's looking to control the world. But then Republicans say, yeah, but you criticize us, so we're pretty much the same. Where it's like, no, you think I'm a baby eater. Like, it's not the same. And then you see things like Matt Gaetz, for example, with his current. Yeah, I'd check the news every day because I'm waiting for the day that guy goes to jail. I cannot wait. But it reminds me of someone like Al Franken from Minnesota, who, a picture of him came out trying to be funny when he was a comedian, and he resigns immediately for that. And then you've got someone like Matt Gaetz, or someone like, I don't want to say her name again, but they've got this, like, Matt Gaetz Venmo'd $900, and then that was redistributed to everyone knows the story.
It's like nothing touches them. Like,
it's like a stank Scotch guard. It's like they can't get stained. So do you find yourself, I guess my question is, do you find yourself being infuriated like I am? Because there's good people like you that are like, I'm trying to make a change. I'm trying to kind of fight the corruption. And then you seem to have these just like moralists, like soulless kind of people, and just nothing touches them. And it blows my mind. It gets under my skin so bad.
I think there's definitely some hypocrisy. I think the right is held to a different standard than the left. I think we see that all the time. Look at how Barack Obama, look at the standards he was held to compared to Donald Trump. That right there is,
Oh, the golfing alone.
Exactly.
Like, he golfs so much.
Yeah. And if it were, take the situation Matt Gaetz is in and say it was I don't know. Adam Schiff.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think the left would be reacting? Or how the left would call for resignation, the right would be losing their minds, but he would be expected to resign.
Well, it's kind of like an Andrew Cuomo kind of situation.
Yeah.
Where like the left right now is like, you need to quit, and the right's like, you need to quit, and he's like, I'm not going anywhere.
Well, Andrew Cuomo kind of, yeah.
I mean, he's kind of a sleaze in general, but like,
yeah, but the way I look at it is, I have to be able to sleep at night. I mean, I'm kind of an insomniac, but in theory,
right.
And I can't lie for anything, so yeah, you have to live by a moral compass, I think, as best you can in the political realm, I think. But I don't know how these people can do the things they do and then still look at their families in the eye and go and talk to their constituents and say, hey, I'm still gonna help you, and I promise to do this, knowing they're full well not going to, and then still able to sleep at night. I do not understand that. And maybe I'm naive. I've been told that before, but for me, I still truly believe in helping people and doing the right thing, which is one of the reasons I'm running. And I think that's, if you can't do that, if you can't be willing to go talk to your constituents and find out about their needs and be willing to do the work on behalf of them, then you don't need to be in office.
Yeah, I agree. And it's I think what gets disheartening for me is that, and I think this goes to like kind of both sides of the aisle, but it does, even if it's someone that I don't necessarily agree with their policies, it seems like the majority of people, first of all, I think it takes a certain kind of person to say, hey, I want to represent, my district, or I want to be in the government, or I want to be part of like this policy making. I think there's a certain, the same way I think there's a certain kind of person that like is like, I'm going to play music and get up on stage, or I'm going to tell jokes and get up on stage because I want people to see me, or I like making people laugh, or you get,
yeah,
that kind of person gets something out of that interaction. I think it's very similar to people who want to be in politics. Like, I can't ever imagine having the mindset of being like, I want to be the mayor of Los Angeles. Like, I'm just like, I don't want responsibility for that many people. But I think it's a certain kind of person. I think, and I don't know if maybe you would agree with this, but I think a lot of the times people do go in with well intentions, but I think it's so easy to kind of get sucked into, like Ted Cruz, man. Like I have nothing nice to say about him, but part of me feels like maybe when he went into politics, his intentions were pure. And then the NRA was like, hey, man, you want some of this money? And now he made more money from the NRA than any other politician. And so it's, okay, well, now I understand why you like feed this line of garbage about gun control and things like that, because you're padding your pockets. So do you think it's people with good intentions who may just be swayed in the wrong direction? Or do you think it's people that are just looking for, do you think those people are people who are just looking for like personal gain, I guess is my question.
I think it's probably a good mixture of both, in all honesty. I think I think money talks to a lot of people, and that they can be persuaded, which is unfortunate. But it is what it is. I think some people always have an ulterior motive. I know a lot of people like that I question everything they say because I know there's something behind it. And I think in the world of politics, there's a lot of that. So it's about what's in it for me type thing. So I think, but I also think there's a lot of people that are truly in it for the good of the people who are there to help enact change. So unfortunately, those people don't get enough credit because of the bad eggs.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's just And I guess we do have a question from the internet. And then I wanted to talk to you about the voting law situation there, but kind of with what we're talking about, we got a song for us, questions from the internet.
Questions from the internet.
Awesome. So Kylie on Twitter actually DM'd, and she was asking, what is your view on gun reform and marijuana reform as far as like criminal justice reform goes with the sorry, I should have had her tweet pulled up, Kylie. I'm sorry, but she wanted to know where you stood on gun reform as well as marijuana reform and the criminal justice reform piece that comes along with that. She had mentioned specifically, we see so many black men in prison for possession of marijuana, where now we live in a world where, white kids are coming out of college and having these marijuana startups and they're making millions of dollars while people who are trying to do the same are sitting in jail. So I don't know if you have any strong thoughts about either one of those.
Well, I will start with marijuana. I think it should absolutely be legalized. I think if they legalized it federally, it would make things a lot easier than doing it state by state. And I think it should, anybody who has anything on their criminal record as far as a marijuana charge should be expunged. Anybody who's still sitting in jail or prison because of marijuana charges the cases obviously need to be reviewed and they need to be released. I just think it's 2021. What are we doing here? Why is this still, because it's legal in several states and more states are legalizing it every day. You're having medical marijuana be legalized, I think, in almost most of the states. And so this is pretty much a non-issue. Like, we need to, it's ready. It's long past time for this to happen. And at this point, it shouldn't be a talking point. It should just be, we need to make it happen. I'd like to see Biden do that. I don't think he will, but I would like to see that happen. But that would be something I would push for, is marijuana legalization on a federal level, because I think that is absolutely needed.
Now, let me ask you this, because you just said something that made me kind of curious, but why is it do you think that Biden is shying away from it? Because it seems to me like he ran very like center Democrat, and I know that it seems like that's where he picked up a lot of his votes, are just saying like, listen, I'm not like the woke culture, super left, which if you are, God bless you, man, I can't live like that. But like, he's very, very center of the road. Do you think that is what could, because I know Kamala Harris has come out and been like, yeah, we should federally decriminalize it. But what do you think it is that either prevented him from doing it so far, or that you feel like will stop him from doing it during this term?
I think part of it is he's just still kind of old school, in all honesty, but part of it is he's got other agendas that are more important to him. I think we're seeing that, like with this infrastructure bill combined with the climate bill. He's already moving very quickly to get a lot of things done. And let's face it, 4 years is not a long time, unless Donald Trump's in office.
It can feel like a very long time.
It can feel like a very long time. But I think his agenda, he's got other priorities. I think if he could get to that, that might be something he pushes for. But we all know that in reality, he's pushing a 2-year window right now, because we don't know what's going to happen in the midterms. And typically when it comes to the midterms, the pendulum swings the other way and it flips. and he'll lose either the House or the Senate typically to the other party.
Right. He can party line right now where it's just like, get through everything I want to get through.
Right. So right now, his main priority is getting everything he can that's a big bill passed, which I don't blame him for. I would love to see the marijuana legalization come to fruition, but I don't think that's a big ticket item for him. And with everything else that's going on, I get that. Especially because the states can do that on their own. So I see that being a back burner item for him, especially right now in the 2-year time frame he's got.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah. And I could see that. I mean, especially with the infrastructure plan, it's so massive. And I know a lot of it is, including a lot of AOC's Green New Deal tidbits and stuff like that. So it's going to be a lot to put into place. So I guess I hadn't thought about it that way, but it is, I've said it before, but like, this is the time, like why we can, like the Republicans always do it to us. And we're always like, we need to be bipartisan. And I'm like, not now. Like not after the last 4 years, not after January 6th, like just anything that we feel we need to get done while we can, let's just party line it through. And if you don't like it, put somebody up that people want to vote for. You know what I mean?
Well, in the interest of bipartisanship right now, it's not like it used to be. Republicans are taking a hard line and voting no on everything just to take a stance against everything. They're not even considering what's best for the country, what's best for their own constituents. They're only thinking of how to piss off Joe Biden and stick it to the Democrats. Well, that's not helping anybody. And you're looking like a toddler that's having a tantrum. So,
yeah, I think you saw that with the COVID relief bill, the one that Biden pushed through is, 70-something% of the country was like, yeah, we need this. And the Republicans were like, nope, and it's like, did you forget that you're being paid your job, your paycheck comes to represent the people of your district, so it's like
y'all wanted to take credit for it,
right? And it's I don't know, and I feel like you saw it a lot too, like when Obama was president. Mitch McConnell was like, we're gonna say no to everything. You know what I mean? So and I think the other thing too is it goes back to the extreme right, and because it feels like on that, again, the QAnon stuff and the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys and all these, like just vanilla ISIS is what I always refer to them as. But
I like that.
But you like, I don't know if it's people that like someone like Ted Cruz or Josh Hawley, if they're thinking that they're going to be able to capture that base the same way that Trump did, so they're going all in. But it's like, how do you become bipartisan with that? Like how can you be like, I know you think that we eat babies, but let's talk a little bit about how we can meet in the middle. It's just, I don't get it.
I think part of it is finding the ones you can work with. I think there's still some Republicans out there that are willing to work with you, not on everything, but maybe on some things. And if they're not, I mean, the voters need to be made aware of that. Like, we're trying and they will not work with us. There's only so much you can do. If someone's going to throw a tantrum and not come to the table, then fine, let them sit in the room without dinner. It is what it is. But the country needs to be made aware that it's not us that's choosing to send them to the room without dinner. It's them choosing to stay in their room.
Right. I did want to ask you as well about Kylie's second question. Again, Kylie, thank you so much for DMing, and next time I'll have your tweet pulled up or your message pulled up. But as far as gun reform, because I know that's been it seems like we're catching up for 2020 being in lockdown, because it just seems like it's happening. We're seeing mass shootings happen it feels like it's getting to the point where like you're going to go to the mall and in your head, you're just looking for the person who's going to come in the door. You know what I mean? Like it happens so frequently. So what are your thoughts? And I thought this would be, I like this question because you're from Georgia. Obviously people hunt. I'm in Tennessee. My father-in-law has a bunch of firearms and I don't have a problem with people owning guns. I like guns. I think they're fun to shoot. I'm not a big hunter, but I get why people think that they're cool, but it's obviously something we're unique in the problem that we have as far as these mass shootings go. And it just seems like nothing gets done. It's Democrats want to take away your guns. Every time one of these mass shootings happens, gun sales go through the roof. And then again, people like Ted Cruz are getting paid tons of money by the gun lobby. And it just feels like they want to take away your guns. We're not going to do anything, thoughts and prayers. And then we're in the same spot and it just keeps happening. So in your opinion, let's say you were elected tomorrow, in your mind, what's the right thing? What should we be doing?
Well, I don't have any problem with people owning guns. I mean, I don't own any, but that's just me.
Don't tell people that. You own a lot of guns. You've got tons of guns.
Well, my brother does. My brother has like 30. Right. And my partner has a couple of guns. I don't have any personally. I have knives. I like knives. So.
Oh, you like to get close.
Yeah, I like. Yeah. I have a ton of knives. So yeah, I have like 10 in my truck alone. So I'm weird about it. So yeah, just teach their own. But
want to see it in their eyes.
So it's but I have shotguns before, so I don't have a problem with them. I've dated cops in the past, and I've gone to the range, and I don't have any problems with guns like that. That's not an issue for me. I just don't own one. But I think what we need is more universal background check policies and reform, and we need a waiting period policy. And I think it needs to be federally mandated. I think part of the problem you're seeing is we have these databases and these systems about background checks or red flags and things like that, but they're all statewide. They don't talk to each other. That does no one any good. So we're seeing problems, or they might just be like citywide or countywide, and then you don't see them in another municipality. And what is that going to do if someone goes to try to buy a gun in a different state, but they had a flag over here, and like they had a flag in Nashville, but they came to Atlanta to buy a gun. It didn't show up because the flag was in Nashville.
Right.
So there also needs to be, when we have these common sense red flag laws, there has to be follow-up, and there has to be systems in place for that follow-up. We saw that with the FedEx shooting. The court hearing never happened. They never did the follow-up. That's unacceptable. I've worked in mental health for a very long time. I've had to do the paperwork for in Georgia, it's called a 1013, which is an involuntary psychiatric admission, saying someone is a danger to themselves or others. And it is extensive, and that person gets admitted to a psych hospital for 72 hours against their will, and a judge has to sign off on it, and the cops come and pick them up. And so there's this whole process in place, and we've had to sign documents saying that they can't own a firearm or they can't have anything. We've had to have wellness checks and have family remove anything from the premises. So I've done all of this, and I've seen all of this in action, but you have to have people in place to make sure there's follow through. I've worked for psychiatrists it's their liability. It's nothing gets done. And we need to have a federal regulation on that. So, that background check needs to be a thorough background check. Like, there are systems in there are background check systems that you can run that, I mean, they tell you everything. We use one at work right now that I ran one on myself for this credentialing process I'm going through. Holy crap. It told me, it even had email addresses that I created when I was like 15. Like it tells you literally everything. There's no reason that we can't find this information. It's out there. It just needs to be in a nationwide federally accessed database. Anyone who's going to sell a gun should also have a license to sell. I don't care who you are. If you're going to sell a gun, I don't care if it's one gun, I don't care if it's 25 guns a month. You should have a federally recognized license to sell. And most people who sell guns do have, a permit to do it, but it should be across the board.
Well, you can gift them as well, can't you? Like, can't you be like, I got this as a gift, which is strange, which is a problem.
Yes, exactly. And so all these things need to be put in place, like basically a tracking system. So there's a chain of evidence for where the gun goes. And I think if we have these common sense laws in place, so anybody can say, no, I'm not selling you a gun. There's no penalties or repercussions against them, just because I might have a clear background check and there's nothing stopping me from buying a gun. But if I walk in and you have an uneasy feeling about me, you don't have to sell me a gun. And there's no consequences, because let's face it, we live in a litigious society. So, in theory, I could technically sue you for not selling me a gun, but there should be protections against that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I wanted to ask you this because I was talking with a friend of mine, and because when it comes to the Second Amendment, it seems like everyone focuses, the Second Amendment is two parts, the right to bear arms for a well-regulated militia, right? And so it seems like everyone focuses on the right to bear arms part, but no one pays attention to the well-regulated militia. So, I was talking to a friend, and a friend of mine was like, yeah, man, like you should have to get a psych evaluation. Like you can't be a cop and carry a gun unless you have a psych eval to say like, hey, this person is, so like, what's wrong with, before you go buy a gun, you have to go see someone, sit down, have a session. They ask you questions and you come and say like, hey, okay, like I'm clear here. Like I'd like my gun, please. And then you have your waiting period or whatever. But it's like, I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that. Cause to me, it just seems like, you go to get your driver's license. How many hours do you have to do of, driver's training, and you drive with an instructor? Here in Tennessee, they just pass like the no permit carry. So you can just, you don't have to have a permit. You just strap up, walk around, and it's, I don't know. It doesn't. So like Governor Bill Lee here, who's just a peach. It seems more like he's waving his flag to let all of his 2A people know, like, I got your back, where it's because they cover it under, well, yeah, but if you steal a gun, now it's a felony and not a misdemeanor. And like kind of what they're doing with the Georgia voting laws, where they're saying like, hey, no, we're just expanding access to voting, but then but only in white neighborhoods, like, so like, what do you think of that? Like, do you think there should be more requirements as far as like, if you want to go in and get a gun, should you have something that shows like, hey, I'm of decent mental health?
I think there should absolutely be like a training requirement. And I think that training should, so like, okay, for example, in the healthcare industry, if you're a licensed healthcare professional, you have to have so many continuing education hours every year to renew your license. And you have to show proof of that continuing education in order to renew your license every year. I think it should work the exact same way. If you own a gun, you have to go to training for it every year, safety training, whatever. And then you get those continuing education units and credits, and then you can renew your license every year. showing you've had the firearms safety training, general weapons training, gun, what am I thinking of? Range training, and it should work the same. I'm not necessarily opposed to a mental health check. The problem with that is there's a serious lack of resources there, of just getting mental health providers available to do that, and then reimbursement for it is another big thing. So, and then you also run the risk of the liability falling on the mental health provider who certified it. So most of them would not even consider doing it because they run the risk of them being liable if that person goes and does something.
That's interesting. I guess I didn't think about that point. It sometimes it feels like, we live in a country with more guns than there are people. And so it's just like, what do we do? You know what I mean? Because it's I don't, between mass shootings and police shootings, it gets to be so much. You know what I mean? It just like,
well, I think it's I've always thought it's an extremism problem and a fanaticism problem that leads to these extreme behaviors. People generally will get obsessed with something to a point of no return, which again follows a mental health line. But there should have been indicators there well in advance to put a stop to it. But if there's nobody in the person's life or they're not paying attention, so I think if people paid more attention to like extreme behaviors and fanaticism behaviors, I think those are indicative of these patterns of mass shootings. If you look at the people who are committing them.
Yeah, it's just crazy because like I remember I was in elementary school when Columbine happened. And then the only other mass shooting that I had even like heard about was the bell tower shooter at that college camp, like in like the 50s or whenever that was. So I remember being that age and being like, oh, this is going to be like, this is a historic event. Kind of like, you remember where you were when like 9/11 happened. Like I was a junior in high school. I was in math class. I remember very vividly, but it seems now that like that exact same thing could happen tomorrow. And we just be like, what else is on TV? You know what I mean? Because you see so many of them. So it's like, I don't know how you deal with being desensitized. I don't know. It's just, and it feels like we can't even politically have a conversation because it just turns into, again, like, well, they're going to take your guns. And it's like, if Democrats were going to try to take your guns, we were going to take your guns when Obama was president and you still got your guns.
Nobody's taking anybody's guns. They need to get over that. It's just a way to get people riled up on the right. I think the biggest thing is educating the community. If we can educate people what to look for in people that are depressed, people that are showing signs of psychosis, people that are showing signs of extremism, fanaticism. If you recognize the signs early enough and you can intervene or get intervention, I think that would be a big help. But society is so cut off from one another, and COVID-19 has not helped that. People don't talk to one another anymore. And even in the same household, it's kind of sad. And people, they're isolated. And when you're isolated, your thoughts ruminate. And these kind of things, when you're on a screen all day, it just makes it worse. And you're compounding the problem. And so I think recognizing the signs, recognizing some of the behaviors is a big step. I remember in high school, they made us watch this video in health class about recognizing the signs of suicidal behavior. And that I can still vividly tell you about that video. And I remember that because a friend of mine ended up committing suicide when I was in high school. And it sticks to me to this day. And I'm like, where was this video, before he committed suicide? So it just sticks with me. But if we had more videos like that talked about other behaviors to recognize that are just as dangerous, because some of these people have an intention of suicide by cop, or their intention is to commit suicide, but they're going to take others down with them, which is horrible, but they're hurting and they want other people to hurt too.
Right.
And they're already not thinking rationally. So if we can educate people on a mass scale of what to look for and what the signs are, because there are a lot of universal signs that you can look for. People just aren't aware of them.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think to that point, like when you mentioned like living on screens, like I watched that QAnon Into the Storm documentary, and I was really blown away by the fact that like I knew like 8chan and 4chan were all like terrible websites, but I didn't understand that it was a supportive community for people with terrible feelings and terrible ideas, And so I think you're right. We need something. It's so easy, when you, especially like when you're like, you think about like that quote unquote incel culture, or like the Chrysler shooter where, you can have these thoughts, you can go on, and then people are like, yeah, man, I know exactly what you're talking about. You're right. Like you get that negative support where it's what would happen if we had that positive outreach to say like, hey man, like you cool. Like I noticed this, or these are the signs to look for. I think if that's, and it's also a great business idea. If somebody's not working on making those videos now, like get to it, because you'll make a bunch of money. But
it would be a definite public health service for sure. When I worked in mental health, I used to tell the doctor I worked with that we should make videos like this. And he's like, it's so depressing. I'm like, of course it's depressing. I was like,
talking about depression.
Yeah. I was like, but this would be, we would talk about like hosting community events. And I said, this is something that people need to know about, that people need to recognize that some of these things aren't normal, and they need to get help for their loved ones or themselves if they're seeing this or experiencing it, because they might think, oh, I'll get through it, but sometimes it can get really bad. And I always talk about like with depression and things, you're battling your brain, you're battling your own mind, and that can get very dark, but it's very tricky because you don't know who's winning.
Yeah.
So any outside help you can get is always good, but any kind of educational things that can be provided, I think would be fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point too, because like even myself, like I'm a pretty chipper guy for the most part. Like I'm happy with my life. I'm happy with my family, but even myself, like I have this recurring fear that I'm going to die in my sleep with my daughter sleeping in the bed, and she's going to be trying to wake me up, and she's going to be like, daddy. And I have like this dream, and I wake up and I'm like, why the hell? Like what kind of, why is that negativity in my brain? Like what is, and thankfully, like through therapy and stuff, I've learned that it's just like, I have a fear of something happening to me before I get to be a good dad, and she like afraid of her not having memories. And so that's a whole nother episode, but but like even someone who, has positive mental health for the most part, like still deals with those things. So it's good to, like you've got tools to work on things in your home. You've got tools to work on your car. Like why not have a set of tools to work on your mental health that's easily accessible? And I think especially in areas, like minority communities, communities of people of color, things like that, like, going to seek mental health services is not something, there's stigmas attached to it. You know what I mean? So
there's stigmas. Absolutely. The access to mental health care though is horrible. And, when they put the ACA in place, there were protections built in for mental health care. And there was a mandate that insurance companies had to provide coverage for mental health care services. It could no longer be a separate rider or anything. It had to be part of your built-in coverage, kind of like maternity care and everything else. Like if you had insurance, you automatically had mental health care coverage. Trump did away with that mandate. So that went out the door. And so now,
no reason, just,
yeah, of all people to say no need for mental health care.
Right.
And so you saw a lot of people just stop getting mental health care treatment because of it. And that's a huge problem because it's hard enough for someone to walk in the door. And then once they had access to the coverage, getting them in the door, you got them there, you got to keep getting them treated. But then you take the coverage away, you're not going to get them back in that door.
Right.
Not if they're going to have to pay privately. So that's a big thing part of this is we need that access back. And then for these underserved and just not served communities and these very vulnerable communities, if there's access at all to mental health care, Medicaid especially has horrible mental health coverage. Like if you're over 21, they don't even cover therapy. They're like, you're an adult, you don't need it.
Yeah.
Which is just stupid. And then depending on your diagnosis, they don't even cover treatment. So there's a lot of different things going on for mental health that just needs the overhaul across the board. And it just needs to be treated like regular health care. It shouldn't be a talking point. It's kind of like women's health care. It should just be another form of health care because it's just as important as your physical health.
Right. Yeah, and I agree. And I mean, I think especially for men, like you're kind of, I know for me for a long time, like I knew I probably should have been talking to somebody, but you have that, like, I've talked about it before, but like I was the guy who would just push everything down and be like, it's fine. Like, like that's what being a man is. Like you have stuff that happens, you push it down, you deal with it. And then I caught myself at a red light. The person I was in a relationship with at the time, we got into an argument and I was like, I'm going for a walk. And I caught myself at a red light, like, well, you're wrong and I'm wrong. And like people are like talking to myself and people are driving by looking at me like I'm a Vietnam vet. Like this guy, like just get home from something crazy. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I should probably, and then luckily meeting my wife with her being in the social work field and being so big on mental health, that was a really big encouragement to be like, yeah, dude, go talk to somebody. Like you're having a hard time,
Oh, I encourage everyone to do it from time to time. It is very cathartic. You just talk to a totally objective person and it's great.
Yeah,
you
I definitely
have to find the right therapist. And
I mean, especially now, and I think COVID has really kind of shined a light on this. I had Dr. Viviana Coles on, she's a licensed family therapist and sex therapist, but she, COVID really shined a light on like how easy it is to get that kind of care at home now. If you have a cell phone, and granted, it's not always. I think the problem is now is that for a lot of people, it's not financially accessible. Where the technology may be there, where you can have the app. The company that I work for in my day job, we have an employee assistance program. So it's like, you get X amount of free visits, just use this code, which makes it a lot easier. But if I didn't have that, I can't, it's $80 to sit and talk with somebody, so if you're someone who lost their job because of COVID, or, you're barely making ends meet because, you're a single mom with 4 kids like my mom, that $80 may not be, something that you could just throw out. So I think the idea of having having it included and I don't know, I think it's just as important as, going and getting a checkup every year. You know what I mean? Like,
sure. Absolutely.
Make sure you're emotionally where you should be. Speaking of access, the last thing I did want to talk to you about was the voting laws that have just passed in your home state, because it's been a big point of contention. I know a lot of businesses have been boycotting. Some people are saying, yeah, go ahead and boycott. Some people are saying, no, like keep spending money in the state, show them who has the power, things like that. And we kind of touched on it a minute ago, but it seems like what's happening, and maybe you can kind of expand on this, but it seems like what's happening is doing a lot to make it harder for minorities to vote, while pushing this view of, well, hey, we're just expanding voting access. Is, for someone who doesn't live in the state, does that sound like a fair assessment?
Well, that's what they're trying to say. However, I read the entire bill. And yeah, there's a lot hidden in there that they don't talk about. So it's pretty ugly. The one thing like everybody's talking about is you can't give food or water to anybody in line, which is, considering like the primaries or the primaries take place in like July here. It's going to be 100 degrees, not higher. You can't give people water. No, that's just, no, come on. But it makes it illegal for someone to accept food or water, which, yeah. But they've made it, like you can't, they've banned like all the mobile voting units, even if it's a state of emergency, no mobile voting units.
Now, I was reading, I thought that they could use them, but only in like a designated state. And I might be wrong, but some things they can use, but not the mobile voting units. Okay, because I thought they had like the voting buses and stuff like that.
Yeah, so they've banned those altogether now.
Cool.
So, and then they've made it where the drop boxes can no longer be outside; they have to be inside. And the only way you can get around that is if there is a declared public emergency, but it can only be declared by the governor of the state. A local mayor or anything cannot be, their declared state of emergency will not work.
Right. So in some place, like with COVID, for example, in Tennessee with Bill Lee, he, it was anti-mask mandate, everything like that. So it makes it very easy if you're someone who's super party line, like Brian Kemp is, for example. You can just be like, nope, no state of emergency, even though you're going through some crazy pandemic or, something insane.
Yeah. So like a county or like a city mayor could declare a state of emergency, but unless it's the whole state under a state of emergency, then you can't have the drop boxes outside.
Okay.
So that's going to override everything. And then they've also put restricted hours on the drop boxes. It's taking away nearly 300 hours of access for the drop boxes, which is a lot for each election cycle. And then the big thing that nobody really realized is now the drop boxes have to have an in-person security personnel monitoring them. So it used to be just camera surveillance on them to make sure they weren't tampered with or anything like that. Well, now it has to be an in-person security personnel. So that cost for the counties is going to increase substantially. And of course, nobody's talking about that.
Well, and it seems like a crazy thing to do. It seems like that's being pushed by the narrative that there was some kind of election fraud, which there's still been absolutely zero proof of. I mean, Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, he's suing Dominion, but I don't think it's going to work out so well for him. But there's been Trump's Attorney General William Barr was like, yeah, man, like nothing. We can't find anything. And to then put that cost onto counties to be like, well, just to make sure we have secure elections, is like the last one was secure.
Yeah. They are no longer going to send out the vote by mail applications to all voters. You have to actually request one online. And they're not going to be sending the vote by mail applications to unregistered eligible voters either. So this is something I read too, and maybe you can shed some light on this. So from what I understand, with the mail-in ballots now, you have to have like your driver's license, the last four of your social, which to me seemed incredibly unsafe. Like you just from what I understand, you have to put your date of birth on it, and then I think your ID number.
Yeah, because I was reading and it was saying that I was reading just an article that recapped it, but it was saying that it was saying driver's license number, like your birthday, the last four, again, because there was no evidence of any fraud. But again, even like having to put like I pay everything by debit card because I'll call in. For example, this year we had an escrow shortage. So they were like, you can mail in a check. And I was like, hell no, I'm not mailing in a check for $600 somewhere. I support the postal service, but I've also had mail not be delivered by the postal service. So
yes, exactly.
It's something that I support them, but it needs to be done better. So I can't imagine like writing my personal information and just being like, well, I hope this gets to the right place,
They've also put provisions in here stating that a single person can challenge the voter registration of an unlimited number of voters at one time, thus resulting in that voter or voters being purged.
So expand a little bit on that, like for people who may not. So I could say, hey, Heather, I don't think your vote and your family's vote are legitimate. And
so you can basically call me out and say, I don't think your voter that you're actually registered to vote. And if I don't carry my voter registration card, but you can call me out and say, I don't think you're registered to vote. And the three people behind you, I don't think they're registered to vote. And all four of us, our votes would be purged from the record.
That's ridiculous. And so let me ask you this, because to me, it really does seem like, for example, like you go back to the water, right? A July election. And especially when you look at, the most recent election, people in neighborhoods of color in Georgia stood in line for hours, to vote. And thank God that they did, because it showed that, like, I think that kind of Stacey Abrams has done amazing work mobilizing people there, but people were like, I don't care how long it takes. I'm casting my vote because it matters, So to me, it feels like they looked at it and said, well, we don't want all these black folks standing in a line for all, let's make it harder for them to stay. No food, no water. I find it very hard to think that, someone in the suburb of Decatur, Georgia, for example, and they're nice white neighborhood, they're going to be like, I don't think you're registered to vote. But I could see that happening, in certain areas of Atlanta very, very easily, so like, as someone who lives there, is it infuriating for you? Because like we're supposed to live in a democracy where everyone's vote matters just as much as everybody else. But then like both of the Dakotas have as many senators as California. So it seems like it's a rigged game where they're just trying to continue to rig it and make it harder for voices to be heard because they want to hold that power. And I don't know if you feel the same way or if you have a more optimistic view, but I'm just like, to hell with these folks.
The way I look at it is they know that they're losing elections, and instead of reforming their policies or doing the right thing and getting out and talking to their constituents to see how they can improve what they're doing, they are cheating the system and choosing their voters, the ones who know that they will vote for them. And the ones that won't vote for them, they're just kind of finding ways to leave them out.
Yeah, well, it's like, gerrymandering used to work and now it just doesn't work as well, so it's like we got to find new ways. I also wanted to ask you this, being a resident of the state and, again, being somebody who's running, what are your thoughts on, Tyler Perry? I believe he said he was going to move out of Atlanta, stop filming there. Will Smith was filming a movie there and he left. I believe it was like the MLB All-Star game was supposed to be there and they left. And then of course you have Coca-Cola coming out, which I thought was hilarious in a heartbreaking way. But when Mitch McConnell was like, I think businesses should stay out of politics, because like he didn't care when Hobby Lobby didn't want to give the women who worked, that worked there contraceptive, because as a company, they have the same rights as a person, unless Coke is telling him, hey, I don't like what you're doing. Then it's like, stay out, So like, what are your thoughts? Because I know a lot of people are like, stay, use your money to make change. It seems to be a little divided.
Mitch McConnell actually sued the FEC several years ago to keep corporations in politics and corporate money in politics. And now he's telling them to stay out. So that's interesting. And Barry Loudermilk actually voted in favor of that bill to allow Hobby Lobby not to provide contraceptive coverage to women. So just a tidbit on that. But I understand why people want to boycott Georgia. I don't think it's necessarily the right move, because you're punishing the people of Georgia for the people who govern Georgia, for their actions. It's ultimately, it's workers in Georgia that are going to be missing out on work, that are losing their jobs, that are going to be impacted by these companies picking up and moving, and by all these boycotts happening. You're not hurting necessarily Brian Kemp. You're not hurting the Republicans. You're hurting Georgians. You're hurting the constituents here. My advice would be, if you want to do something, use your voice. Try to enact change that way. Stand up, protest, call these different offices and make it clear that this is not okay. Call these corporations and make it clear that this is not okay and you will not stand for this. But calling the corporations and encouraging them to leave Georgia I think, sends the wrong message, because again, you're hurting Georgians, and Georgians are not to blame for the actions of their leaders.
Yeah, because if I understand that, it's not even like this was something that was voted on, right? This is just like, it was a...
No, the state legislator pushed this. They came up with this bill and they passed it, and then it rammed right through the Senate onto the governor's desk within the same day. Right. It was
So it's not like the people of Georgia were like, hey, let me go out and vote for this. And I think you're right. I think, Will Smith, like, stick around, make your movie, but, give some of your paycheck that you're getting for making this movie, give it to some, local activist groups, give it to Stacey Abrams to help mobilize more voters and go out and prove them wrong.
Donate it to the groups on the ground that are making a difference. Donate it to candidates that are running to try to unseat these politicians that are enforcing these laws, that are supporting them, who are bragging about them. Like Barry Loudermilk went on Newsmax talking about it, and was talking about how great it is for the state. It's awful. And so
when Fox News isn't conservative enough, like Jesus.
Yes.
Newsmax is awful, but it's like, I don't know, man. Again, I know we've been going for a while, but that's what makes me hopeful when I get to talk to people like you or see people like you putting your name in the ring and coming in so confident as well. Because I think that's really going to play. I think that's really going to play a big part, is that, you're confidently authentic, and so I don't know. It just seems like, again, I always feel silly saying this, but like being a white man, I can say, like, hey, maybe, we need to get some people in there other than white men. You know what I mean?
Well, and, that's one thing I do say about Barry is no offense, but I think the reason he's stayed in office this long is he's able to fly under the radar and kind of camouflage himself, because he is just another white male.
Well, milk is in his last name.
Exactly. Yes. And he gets away with so much, and he's such a horrible person. Like, if you go look up his voting record and the things he says.
Oh, it's bad.
Oh yeah, it's horrible. And I don't understand. Although I will say, after each election cycle, his win margin is smaller and smaller. So that gives me more hope for this election cycle. But that's part of the reason I started so early, is I want people to know, like, this guy is not good news. I'll try to put it nicely, but if it's not me, it needs to be somebody taking him down. And it needs to happen, because he does not have the interest of Georgia 11 at heart. He has his own interest, and you can tell he's pandering to the Republican Party and to the Trump Party, even now. And it's wrong. People are still hurting, still trying to recover from COVID-19. And he's sitting here going on Newsmax praising this new voter suppression law. Like, no. Go back to Washington and vote for something like you're supposed to be doing.
Or from your house, because everything's remote now,
And, he's bragging about the COVID relief bill that he voted against. And he's just, and then he's just weaselly. I don't like it. He was talking the other day about abortions and everything, and he's so backwards in his way of thinking. And I'm sorry, government should not be involved in women's reproductive health care or women's health care, period. And it really pisses me off when I hear like older white men talking about women's health care, women's reproductive rights. Stay out of my body. It is not your business.
Well, and I mean, let's see how they feel when somebody introduces a law that makes it, mandatory that men get vasectomies. Like, exactly. Can you imagine, like, if someone was like, here's my bill I wrote, like snip and save, and people, they'd be like, my penis, my choice, like it's.
Well, exactly. Like, you're saying that a woman that, when they were trying to pass that bill here, it would say that certain miscarriages past a certain point in a pregnancy would be considered an abortion and you could try the mother. No. So you're gonna bring that to the table? Okay, well, then can every time you masturbate, can we say that's reckless abandonment?
Right.
I mean, it's the same thing in effect. I mean, I could have that debate with him all day long. But
well, and it seems like and I think I've talked about this with Brittany, I believe, but we talked about like it seems like they are missing the line or the definition is hazy between pro-life and pro-birth, because it's, hey, we want to make sure you have this kid, but after you have that kid, we're not doing shit for you. We're not giving you social services. We're cutting budgets to, think about all the other things that Planned Parenthood does besides, abortion.
Oh my gosh. Planned Parenthood, like abortion is like 5% of what they do. Is that, I mean, most of what they do is preventative care, and they do amazing work, but all anybody can recognize is the abortion care, and it's absurd. And I mean, that's like focusing on veterinarians and the fact that all they do is put animals to sleep.
I remember I was in high school and my girlfriend at the time, we were young and stupid and didn't protect the way that we should. And she got freaked out and told her mom. And like, meanwhile, like, I don't even have a driver's license yet. Mm-hmm. And so I remember her mom called me over and we got yelled at real bad, but then she was like, we're going to Planned Parenthood. And I just remember there was like the fish bowl full of condom, and they had the morning after pill and all that stuff. But after she took us, to this day, it makes me laugh so hard. She took us to the grocery store, in Michigan, it's Meijer. So it's kind of like Kroger or Publix, depending on, but it's very busy, very big, and made us buy condoms in front of everyone and stood. So like, we're like buying them. And then she was like, we're going to Burger King. So we went to Burger King after. So I've got this like memory of just feeling like so embarrassed because I was like there with my high school girlfriend and her mom. And then I was like, well, you want to get a Whopper? Like, sure, makes everything better.
That's awful. Oh my God.
Well, for people who want to support you, because again, we're living in an age right now where, someone may be listening to this in Texas and being like, that Heather lady, I'm on board. How can I send her money? Obviously there is heatherforgeorgia.com. We'll link that up in the show notes. But if people are wanting to support you or get the message out, what is the best way to interact with you? What's the best way to support you, in your opinion, as being the person on the ground?
Any kind of feedback is great, but I'm on all the social media channels, and they're linked to, except for like TikTok, because I don't know how you use it. My digital team's working on that because I guess I'm too old for it.
I can't dance, so they won't let me on.
I can't either. I go on TikTok to watch funny videos that my partner sends me. Otherwise, I don't have a clue. But all my social media is linked to my website, and you can follow me and retweet or share whatever I post, and help spread the word, get my name out there and my platform. That's the biggest thing. Of course, donations are always welcome because this is going to be a very expensive race. We anticipate it going to be about $2 million. So we have a lot of fundraising to do. So spreading the word and helping to get those donations would be fantastic.
Well, like I said, we'll link up all the social media. We'll link up the website. Guys, if you're listening, if you want to see positive change in the world, it starts with grassroots campaigns, whether it's where you live, where outside of where you live. Please, 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 if you've got, an extra $1 or $2 or $5, whatever, head over to Heather for Georgia, make a donation. And I wanted to say thank you. Again, like we live in a world where I think it's so easy, and I'm guilty of this too. It's just so easy to focus on the negative and look at how corrupt our system is. And there are, again, we talked about it earlier, but I think there's a certain type of person that goes in with good intentions, and those good intentions actually lead to fruition. And I really get the sense of that from you. So thank you for standing up to someone like Barry Loudermilk and being a voice for people who agree with you. I think it's very courageous, and I'm very excited to see how everything plays out. Hopefully you'll come back and we'll be zooming from DC.
Yes. Well, I'd love to come back anytime. Thank you for having me. And this was a lot of fun. So thank you.
You're most certainly welcome. Will you stick around for a minute after we wrap up?
Sure.
Awesome. Well, guys, that is Johnversations Podcast, is episode 53. Again, remember, heatherforgeorgia.com. Click the link in the show notes. Go over, make a donation. Don't be stingy. Do something good. Do something for change. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you guys next week.